So probably the best place to start is, rather than me fumbling through bits of your biography and trying to tell you about you, is if you would go ahead and give esteemed audience just kind of an overview of your career thus far, and how you're coming to us tonight.
Sure, great. Well, I went to college for theater. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, and I had been doing theater my whole childhood and through high school, and went to study theater at Northwestern. And I did act, but I also at Northwestern became much more focused on playwriting. That was my focus, and I came out of school still doing some acting, but really focused on playwriting and wanting to be a playwright as my career. And I did that together with a lot of teaching, like classroom arts residencies, where I'd come in for 10 weeks and teach a playwriting unit, something like that, which was a lot of fun. But it's pretty impossible to make a living as a playwright.
So you said I need to become a writer, and that'll
right. So I'll write novels. No, that wasn't quite the jump. But it was really tricky, and so I was always doing all kinds of extra freelance work as I could get it, writing things usually, and I substitute taught. But it was when my kids, so I have a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old, and when my 14-year-old was born, excuse me. First of all, it is really hard to do theater when you have small children because it involves being out of the house at night so much. Some people do it, and I don't know how. So that made it trickier for me to do theater. But also, my daughter was this incredible book lover. Her first word was book. And from the time she was
right, you're raising her right.
Right. From the time she was able to sit up, we were reading picture books for hours a day. By the time she was 3, we were reading middle grade. We were reading Chronicles of Narnia and Roald Dahl and the Ramona books.
She's following along with the story.
Yeah, she was 5 when we were reading through the Harry Potters. So I started. I've always been a storyteller, right? And story used to come to me as that would make a good play. But I think because I was spending hours and hours and hours a day reading middle grade novels, that's how story started to come to me. And I started to think, maybe I can write a novel, because I'd always thought I only write dialogue. I'm a playwright. I only write dialogue. I could never write a novel. I could never do any kind of description. Because as a playwright, I'm used to working with designers, and directors who bring their vision. And I don't think visually. So I thought there's no way I could create the whole world myself. But in reading and reading and reading to my daughter, I started to think in terms of middle grade novel. So I tried my hand at writing. I started with middle grade. And I had a long road. I wrote 10 novels before I got published. And actually, I'll back up. I wrote and queried 5 middle grade novels before I got my first agent. And then that agent put that novel on submission, and I kept writing, and she kept putting them on submission. And I had 3 books go on submission with her before I ended up parting ways with her and getting my current agent. But all told, I had 5 books go on submission to editors before my debut deal happened. So it was a long road. And then my debut was Bloodwater Paint, which is a YA novel. And of those 10 books I wrote, 8 of them were middle grade. So I happened to debut in YA, but I feel much more like a middle grade writer. I always felt a little bit like a weird sort of imposter in the YA community, because I just felt like I belonged with middle grade so much more. But it's just the way it worked out, that my debut was this YA novel in verse, historical. And I'm really excited that now I'm finally going to have a middle grade novel out in A Field Guide to Getting Lost.
Well, that makes sense. I was looking through your background, your first novel, and I said, okay, well, this is, and then I read the book after I read your background, because I read your background, like, this is a pretty serious historical young adult novel. Lots of fairly serious themes, a lot of serious plays that you've written and had produced that are available, some information on your website. And then I picked this up. I'm like, how did we get here? This feels like a left turn, but now I'm hearing that no, everything else was the left turn. This was the true north all along.
Absolutely, that is true. Yes, I love middle grade, and I'm continuing to work in YA, but I'm really excited to also have this middle grade avenue, and it's nice to have them both because my second YA is also darker, heavier themes, and I really like having the middle grade to also sort of balance that out for me, just emotionally, what you go through as a writer when you're working on something. It's nice to have the light and the hope of the middle grade to balance out some of the darker young adult stuff that I do.
Yes, it's a nice reprieve for me if I've just written a terrible horror story. Not terrible, I love them, but I've really tortured my characters in all sorts of unspeakable ways. Then it's like, oh, I'm back, I'm safe. We can take a little break. But then when all that gets to be too nice, I know there'll be another horror story waiting for me.
Well, right. Sometimes that darkness is where I'm at, and that's what I need to express. But yeah, having the light place to go back to too is really rewarding.